Ladies and gentlemen, the drama in this story is going up to 11. For those of you who've played the original Persona 5, and for those who haven't, massive spoiler by the way, you may recall Goro Akechi was the Black Masked Assassin that took part in murders for Masayoshi Shido, including Futaba Sakura's mother and Sojiro's girlfriend, Wakaba Ishiki. Obviously, Sojiro was not very happy with all that, since it led to Futaba's trauma, and led to him being hounded by Sai of SIT, I think it was, or Special Investigations Unit, and getting, accused of bad parenting, and almost having Futaba taken away from him. Because of all that, he's obviously not happy to have Goro in the attic, in his very cafe. So, obviously, the end of the previous chapter showed Goro Akechi waking up to Sojiro in his room, across his bed, with a pistol in his hands. Sojiro's hands. So, I wouldn't really be surprised. I don't think anyone would be surprised at this point if Sojiro just shot Akechi's head off. But we'll have to see if that comes to pass in Chapter 11 of Black Star. So let's begin. This frozen tableau. Akechi and Sojiro in the sunny attic. The latter stern-faced. The former somehow even paler than he'd been last evening. The cafe settled and creaked indifferently around them. Sojiro's thumb rubbed at the pistol's safety catch. Looks like an ASIG Sauer P229, he remarked, examining the gun again. Not unheard of for law enforcement who like to carry concealed. But here, this threaded barrel. That's not standard issue at all, is it? That's for installing a suppressor. An assassin's weapon. Oh, and did I forget to mention that he tried to have Ren/Akira killed after he was arrested at the end of the casino? Yeah. Not good times. He ran his palm against the barrel, as if removing dirt. Let me guess. Your father gave this to you? Some birthday present. Why don't we just drop the pretense? Akechi said. Sojiro peered at him from over the rim of his spectacles. A sunken little grin had crept over Akechi's face. Between his pallid complexion and his jutting cheekbones, it made him look like a horror show waxwork, a prop in the shape of a man. Akechi, I wouldn't be grinning if I were you. Sojiro will shoot you. He's probably thinking of shooting you in the head and... Oh, the suspense is getting to me already. There's little point in trying to hide our intentions now, don't you think? He asked. Go on. Say something like, Wakaba Ishiki was a good woman. Sojiro said nothing. Can't muster it up? I think I know why. Because you figured out a while ago that I couldn't have killed her if she didn't have a palace. Some nasty little twist in the mind, eating her up inside. Who knows? She might not have been long for this world anyway. He chuckled as Sojiro's eyes narrowed. They always spill their guts, you know, right before I finish them off. Would you like to know what Wakaba Ishiki tried to confess? Would you like to know what she said about you? Akechi, you are literally going down the route of Joker from the Injustice series. The beginning of it all, he actually arranged for Metropolis to get nuked at the same time that he tricked Superman into killing Lois Lane and their unborn child. And you know what Superman did? Well, Joker did the exact same thing you're doing now, taunting the widow. And what did he get for it? Superman's palm through his fucking heart. Behind his spectacles, Sojiro's eyes were hard and flat as stones. He let out a heavy sigh. Makoto Nijima tried to warn me about you last night. I told her not to bother. I already know exactly what you are. Is that so? His grin widened. And what am I? You're a terrible actor. The grin disappeared. Sojiro's expression was now more bemused than anything. He tilted his head, the corner of his mouth tugging up like it was caught on a hook. For some reason, this made Akechi far more uncomfortable than that deathly glare he'd woken up to. His eyes darted around like he was plotting escape routes. I always thought there was something off about you, Sojiro said. Right when you started coming to the cafe. You were nice enough, but there was something a little too polished about it. I could have turned the TV on in one of your talk show interviews and probably wouldn't have seen a difference. Not to mention the way Akira behaved whenever you were here. When a kid like him doesn't want to be around someone, I take notice. Like a big friendly dog that growls at a stranger. He shrugged. I thought, that's just some paranoid old man instincts acting up. It wasn't enough to really bother me. But this wannabe supervillain routine? Frankly, I'm embarrassed for both of us. I'm not... Enough. Start over. You got caught off guard and tried to intimidate me so you could take control of the conversation. You screwed up. Cut your losses and change tactics. He spoke patiently, like someone lecturing a bright but troubled student. I had to suffer your father's presence for years, kid. If you couldn't bullshit Akira and his friends, then you don't have a chance with me. He felt shame burning hot in his cheeks. The sensation was unfamiliar enough to nauseate him. Why are you here then? Come to check up on your newest tenant? I'm not going to do anything the others don't want me to. Oh. Taking your orders from them now? I guess it makes sense, since your father is... Stop it! His fist clenched. Please! Stop calling him that! Sojiro's eyebrows went up. Akechi's gaze had dropped to his feet. He trembled all over. Alright, fine. He leaned back in his chair, Akechi's gun dangling from one hand. And yes, I wanted to check up on you. Considering how you looked when you came in here, I'd half expected you to have died in the night. One way or another. If it were me, I don't think I'd have any of that self-control. I'd just put the gun to his damn head. Sorry to disappoint. Not disappointed at all. Those kids were pretty insistent on keeping you around. They haven't reached much of a consensus on that. Sakamoto had the right idea. They'd all be considerably happier if I'd been lost instead of Kurusu. And that's only fair. Well, listen to you. Do you actually feel guilty for what you've done? Akechi didn't answer. Maybe it'd be better if you didn't. I doubt anyone could endure that kind of remorse. It falls right through, he murmured.
Falls through what?
Forget it. I'm rambling. His face turned sullen. I've made my intentions clear, so I'm not certain what you mean to accomplish by playing these games with me.
Sojiro said, You killed Akira.
His tone was casual, almost languid. He could have been telling Akechi the punchline of an amusing joke. But the temperature in the attic perceptibly dropped. Akechi's eyes were dragged back to that pistol at Sojiro's side. I didn't, he said, voice shaking.
Oh, yes you did. Almost a year ago to this day. Maybe he pulled a bait and switch at the last moment. I'm still not sure how. I'll never wrap my head around that cognitive mumbo-jumbo. But as far as you were concerned, you shot him dead in some basement. Sojiro's own voice tightened like a turning screw. He was defenseless and drugged and alone, and you killed him and walked away. And yet, here I am, sheltering your felonious hide. Life is funny, don't you think? Shido had been a master of contempt. Once he got away from the podium and the crowds, he looked at everyone and everything like something he just scraped off the sole of his shoe. People around him found themselves doing whatever they could just to get a moment's relief from that disdain. In comparison, Sojiro was more precise, practically surgical. Akechi felt that bespectacled gaze dissecting him, diagramming him, making notes on all the parts of him it found wanting. Life is funny, he said again. I was supposed to spend my twilight years as some weird bachelor playing shopkeeper. Instead, it looks like I tripped and fell into becoming a family man. All thanks to the damage you and Masayoshi Shido caused. That fishhook tug of the mouth again. Wakaba is long past. Maybe there are even some days, rare ones, when Futaba doesn't grieve her anymore. But Kurusu? God help me. I've got a soft spot for the kid. And now I'm expected to believe that the little shit who pulled the trigger on him is going to help him out. It's been a long year. His chest felt far too tight. Things are different now. What's changed? Decided to try and make friends with everyone for real instead of just pretending? Hate to break it to you, but that ship's probably sailed. I wasn't pretending. The words left his mouth before he knew what he was saying, and Sojiro's incredulity was plain to see. His hands flexed like someone struggling to grab a ledge. No taking it back. All he could do now was plunge onward. I wasn't, he said. When Kurusu and I first met, my interest in him was genuine. The way he confronted me in front of all those people. I saw it, Sojiro remarked. On a rerun, anyway. You look like you'd been hit between the eyes with a 2x4. He does have that effect on people, doesn't he? I become used to either deference or contempt, or being ignored completely. But he approached me like he would anyone else. Yeah. It was barely perceptible, but Sojiro had started to thaw. It's one of his few good points. But the event that sparked our encounter had been his defense of the Phantom Thieves, so I checked into his background. He breathed deep. I learned about his other identity fairly quickly. Even his prior encounter with Shido, though I never told the man himself about the connection. And the more I learned, the more fascinated I became. Shido took powerful people, important people, and burned their lives down on a whim. A mere high school student with the gall to actually lay hands on him? By all rights, Kurusu should have been swinging from a self-made noose within a month. But instead, I saw his reversal of fortune. His classmates warmed up to him. He made a place for himself in Tokyo. And, of course, he'd become one of the Phantom Thieves. A faceless legend. I admired him for that. Sojiro smiled. It's a hell of a success story, you've got to... And I hated him. The smile fled. Akechi's face had twisted into something ugly, feral. He stared down at his shaking fists, lips peeled back, teeth bared. Well, nice knowing you, Akechi. I hope you enjoy the brief sensation of having a bullet to the face, and now you'll know how it feels. He didn't have any right to it. Someone who sank as low as him should have stayed down there. After all of the filth I had to wade through just so someone, anyone, would even deign to look my way. How could he just pick himself up back again with that insufferable smirk, touting his childish justice around? I had to make him suffer for it. Bring him down to where he belonged. That's what I thought. I waited in this cafe for him, and I planned my commute around his, and I blackmailed my way into a circle of friends and laughed and joked with them. And all the time, I just kept thinking about the look that'd be on his face when I finally got to... He pressed his fists against his forehead, grinding his knuckles into the bone. When I finally got to... He couldn't finish. His breath had turned fragmented. He had a persistent, irritating hiccup. Akechi lowered his hands and pressed them against his stomach, his unkempt hair hanging over his eyes. Tears rained free from behind that veil. He refused to look up. He didn't want to see Sojiro's face. I apologize, he managed to say. I don't know why I'm behaving this way. Something about saying it aloud. It sounds so... People speak a different language inside. Against all reason, Sojiro's voice had softened. I haven't known many who couldn't look their own ugliness square in the face without flinching away from it. For a while, I thought Shido could. But after his heart got stolen, he fell to pieces just like everyone else. And it's even rarer to find someone willing to try and fix themselves. Futaba was one of them. After Wakaba died, something broke in her. It took her a long time to gather up the nerve to confront all that damage. Not that I was any help. All those books and things I bought her didn't do shit in the end. Only she could figure out what she needed to escape from her own head. How about you, Are you just tagging along with these kids out of some sense of atonement? Or is there something else you want? He was crying, but he couldn't understand it. The action and the knowledge were there, but without the emotion, it was just a troublesome distraction, like a bad itch. But he remembered crying like this recently, when Akira had rebuked him in the Dead Sea and dispelled his last lingering delusions about their bonds with each other. He tried to play it off, only to break down in tears and still without comprehending why. But it had been different then. It was real, Akechi said. Sojiro remained silent as he sniffled and wiped his eyes.
There's something wrong with me, he said. I can't tell when I'm acting and when I'm not. I don't know when there's a difference. But the time I spent with them, invading Nijima's heart, the danger, those idiotic code names, everything was brighter. I thought I was pretending to enjoy it. I was too busy focusing on my goal to pay attention. But I wasn't pretending. It was real.
He let out a small, strangled laugh.
I know it's pathetic, but that month I spent with them was the best time I knew. I just want to feel like that again. Just once. And the worst thing is, I could have. Every day I knew them, I could have made my choice. But I didn't. Instead, I threw my lot in with Shido, of all people. And it didn't even make a difference. In the end, it was all for nothing.
He covered his face with his hands.
What a waste.
In the time since he'd woken up, the sun had risen fully. Its light streamed through the window and struck the far wall. Sojiro's silhouette was printed there, unmoving. You're right, Sojiro said at last. It's a goddamn waste. He rose, grimacing as his stiff knees popped. He held Akechi's gun between the tips of his fingers, daintily, like a society lady forced to pick up something dead. I'll keep this, if you don't mind. You can have it back when you turn yourself in. Should definitely get the police's interest.
All right.
He spoke in a frail whisper. All the fight had left him. Sojiro gathered up the suppressor and the extra magazine, started to leave, and then paused at the top of the stairs. You know the saddest thing of all? He said, without looking round. I'm pretty sure those kids still think of you as one of them, despite everything. Maybe you ought to do something to deserve that trust. Akechi stared. I'll bring up something to eat. The stairs creaked and groaned as he descended. Akechi was left alone in the sunny attic, looking like he'd just been slapped.
Thank you,
he said. But Sojiro was well out of earshot. He spoke to the empty air.
If this fanfic... At this point, I just know it's going to end with Akechi turning himself into the police. I just hope that before that he can have his big redemption arc and be able to save Akira. I just hope so. What do you guys think? Please let me know what you think in the comments. Those who play the original Persona 5 and read my Let's Read series all the way up to this. Not just shooting him in the head, despite everything. Instead, talking him down. Sojiro's the fucking boss for a reason. Pardon my language. See you. Until next time, that is.